Good afternoon, welcome to Market Wrap number 149. Stuart Williamson here at the helm. Thank you for joining us this week. This is our weekly roundup of news that's hopefully newsworthy, that you enjoy, bite-sized bulletins for clients and prospective clients. Mainly the residential market in the UK, but not only, a little bit of international this week. Please do like, share, subscribe and comment. Okay, as you can see, I'm in a bit of salubrious environment. I'm in our new podcast room, which is an old cow shed that we're converting this week. Hopefully you'll see it develop. Now we're looking at the UK and global housing markets and where they stand. What do the figures say and what can we take for granted is true, or what do we need to take with a pinch of salt? Now I'm going to look at the first example is in the Daily Telegraph. They said that Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane house prices were down by 9 to 11%. They quote that. However, it's the same misrepresentation we get in the UK. They use the Westpac CoreLogic's report, which is the overall average for Australia, Tasmania, Hobart, wherever. Okay, I can tell you that I've got a property in Sydney on the North Shore, and it's a completely different animal to say the western suburbs. It's flat or it's going up. So beware what you read and what you believe. The Economist goes on to say, with a similar report, that the global housing market slowdown is far from uniform. They've got three different markets. They say we've got the early adjusters, which saw house prices soar during the pandemic, which is Sweden, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, places like that. And then people who took out flexible mortgages to take advantage of that, variable rates. Now these have suddenly gone up in price, and we've seen big house price falls, according to what the economists say. But it's not across the board. Bullet dodgers. This is the US and France, which is quite extraordinary really. The impact of higher mortgage rates has yet to be felt in these markets. After the subprime crisis, the GFC as we know it, in 2007, a large proportion of US households took out fixed term mortgages, which were for 20 to 30 years. Amazing. In France, they have very low household debt. Did you know? Who would believe that the French were great savers? But they are. Very low household debt. So not affected. Now we've got slow burners, which is the UK and Germany. House builders in those locations are sounding the warning horns and saying we're not getting much buying action, so probably house prices are going to fall. It may do so, we don't know. So that's the view from the Telegraph, a bit harum scarum. The Economist, a bit more reasoned. And then I went on to look at some research by Knight Frank, Tom Bill. And he says why they believe you should take a pinch of salt in all this sort of indices. In recent weeks, we've seen the Nationwide announced that the UK has declined by 3% in the year to house residential prices in the year to March, whereas Halifax reports a rise of 1.6%. Now that's the biggest divergence in those reported figures since 2019. And it's not really exposing them as being poor calculators, it just shows that they crunch their numbers in different ways. It says, and then basically you need to handle with care what you're looking at. An index is only as good, if you think about it, as the raw data. A cook is only as good as their ingredients. So recent market conditions where sales volumes have been low and mortgage volatility high makes it difficult for these indices calculators to work. The Nationwide doesn't include buy-to-let transactions. Can you believe it? The Zuta law, they don't include that. They also don't adjust for seasonality, location. These are bound to have effects. And if you look at a reason behind this last month's discrepancy, and specifically, then we need to go back to the mini budget, the quasi-quaternion Liz Truss debacle. Indices, according to Dr. James Currier, who's the head researcher at Knight Frank, are susceptible to fluctuations as sample sizes become constricted. On top of certain lending environments indexes contain more divergence and more variations. So, especially if you're using a very small sample, if there's only 5 people and one of them's only got one leg, then it's 20% of the people that have got one leg, and that's not a real, not 20% of people, everyone out there has got one leg. It's not like that. I'm not saying anything negative about one-legged people. But it's a much more complex picture than those indices reflect. You look at the ONS. Okay, the ONS is a useful proxy because it looks at although a bit delayed, it looks at housing data using the land registry. And it found that house prices rose by 6.3% in the year to January. So you think that must be a good one. But then the latest report from Serve Acadata, whose model also uses land registry data, but completed sales, which is slightly different, in the year to March, said the market was up by 3.5%. In reality, Knight Frank say there are tens of thousands of different housing markets right across the UK, each with their own supply and demand dynamics. As a result, a national index will not necessarily tell you much about what's happening on your street. And Knight Frank go on to say, even regional indices can disguise huge differences in local markets. There's a clue actually in the methodology, says Dr. Curry. The nationwide statement says, we use a set of characteristics that describes the typical UK house in order to track the value of a typical UK property over a set period. This typical house does not actually physically exist. So they're making up a house to track. And they use this analogy in business. Does the GDP crashing through the floor in the UK mean that our business that's based there will crash through the floor as well? No, it doesn't. And it's also worthwhile, looking at other things that aren't included, like cash sales. Okay, savings accumulated during the successive lockdowns basically meant that more people paid their mortgages off. And if you look at the data from Tosca Fund, and a gentleman there called Savas Savouri, who's the chief exec, he has estimated that around 10 million properties are owned outright in the UK, compared to 6.1 million mortgage properties. The proportion of mortgage homes fell to 26% from 32% over the last decade, while the number of debt-free properties has risen from 38% to 38% from 31%. It means drawing conclusions without including these houses in the indices is crazy. And you can't just look at lending and say, okay, mortgages are all going to be redone at the end of next year, and that's going to be a massive problem for the house market, because if you listen to it, 60% of people in the UK don't have mortgages. I mean, that is an amazing figure. I did not know that. But 60-odd%, don't have mortgages. That's quite extraordinary. And I mean, a lot of that is the baby boomer thing, people very wealthy who've gone through to that and paid it all off. But having said that, and if you think about it, of the 30% left, only 5% have mortgages of more than 90% loan to value. So again, if interest rates go up, those are the people who will be mostly hurt because they've got the biggest loans and they've got to pay off. So when looking at indices, have a pinch of salt with them. Think about what is the real picture. Focus on ties, transport, infrastructure, employment when choosing, and choose just good markets. I bought in Hackney 35 years ago. It was a dump. People were getting murdered in our street. Now it's wine bar central, and properties have gone up by 10 times. Who would have thought that? Perhaps that could be the same for Ely in Cardiff. Perhaps it could be the same for West Bromwich in Birmingham. Who knows? But look at fundamentals and say what is going to be positive about that place to make it go up in value. Now, on a completely different topic, as we say, last week some of our marketing people went up to visit Sandstone and Michelle Grant in Edinburgh. There's some of the video links below, some of the photos. They looked at basically how they turn their buy, renovate, remortgage, rent out properties into 10% rental yield vehicles, which is quite phenomenal. 10% rental yield. I know it works. I have got clients who have bought them and who are getting that benefit now. So have a look at the videos if you can. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. A lot of stats in there, and I suppose I went very quickly. All the best. Please do share, like, comment, and so on. Bye-bye.